Welcome to Crosstalk. The intersection of the church, politics, and money is something that is not new to Kenya. You remember in early 1980s and 1990s, we had religious leaders, people like Reverend Timothy Njoya, Bishop Okulu, Reverend Muge. These are people that could speak, and the country would say the church has spoken. But of late, money is making a deep socio-political statement, mostly in our churches. And in this way, majority of people are perceiving this as a way of silencing that voice of the church. And not just the voice of the church, the prophetic voice of the church that could speak truth to power. Today, we want to look at that intersection of church, politics, and money. Is the political class in this country trying to silence the very same voice of the church, the voice of reason? Joining me tonight is Reverend Mark Echakara. Reverend is a pastor, but also a governance expert. So he understands both the spiritual and the governance issues that affect this country. So he will be speaking to some of the political developments that we have also seen in the recent past, and how does that affect us as a people. We also have Pastor Moses Githinji. Pastor Moses Githinji is the chair of the EAK Youth Commission. Evangelical Alliance, as we speak, is celebrating 50 years of existence. This is the umbrella body that brings all the evangelical churches together. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Of course, talking about church, politics, and money, who has the control? I can start with you, Reverend.
Well, I can't say who really has the control.
Yeah.
Everybody has a control within their space, within their province. When it comes to the church leaders have control and authority over their space. The politicians also have power, have authority over their space. And now the intersection of those authorities for the common good of society is where the issues come in. And those interactions, how they affect society negatively or positively. The interaction of the political authority and the religious or spiritual authority, their interactions, their mingling, is the one that affects society, whether negatively or positively. So from what we have seen playing out in our nation over the past few years, there is always a sense in which many people are being dishonest because we don't make a disclaimer from the onset and say, I have some degree of interest in this matter and subject. I have, and therefore, some level of prejudice, even in and bias in my view of everything. People don't do that. People talk as though they are innocent, they are clean, they don't have any interest, they don't have any biases. But the truth of the matter is, the majority of the people who are running commentaries about the issues that are happening around this matter have biases, but they don't declare them from the onset. So people run with people pick their analysis and their commentaries as though they are from men who are clean and have no vested interest in the whole thing. So that's to me is the big problem that we have.
Okay. Okay. We just started, Pastor Moses, by mentioning some of the religious leaders in the recent past, people like the late Bishop Okulu, Reverend Gitari, Bishop Muge, Reverend Njoya. These are people that were very vocal, and they were the very critic of the then regime, the President Moi's regime. That can't be said of the current church as we speak.
You can't say the church operates outside a vacuum. We don't. The church doesn't do that. The church is a voice of hope. The church is a people called of God to bring hope and the light to the world. But now, church again has been caught in a space where you have to think about leadership and governance. And growing those times, I remember people used to say pastors are very poor people. Nowadays, probably everybody wants to be a minister because it looks like a quote-unquote a good job. But those days, John Paul, I can say, the calling was evident and it was clear to people, this man is actually called to this. Today you talk about a ground that has changed. The turnaround has become very different. We grew up, looking forward to be people who will become influential and step in and be that voice. But today we look at a different platform when it comes to church and state. And when you ask about when you ask the question about who has influence, they always say follow the money. Follow the money, you find who has influence. But in a nutshell is to say that church and state are one thing. King David was both a king and a prophet. He never separated the two because God is the only one again who gives that authority. If you bring that to our country today, you can see the division, you can see the church nowadays, nobody knows who is the church. Sometimes when you say who is the church is asking back who is the church. And there is this kind of conversation going on. And so there is a blurry conversation in between there. And I think it needs to be discussed in detail.
And I think probably one of the biggest problems is that many people know the influence that the church holds. The authority, the power that the church has. And many are afraid if their opponents were to get the upper hand in their interaction with the church, that the church will amplify their voices. So the majority of the people are not innocent. You see the example of the gallant fathers of faith that you have given, men and women who literally lay their lives down for the sake of the social justice in our nation. Those are men who are fearless, and some of them paid the ultimate price. Men like Muge, literally, they were murdered. They lost their lives within the course of advocating for social justice. But when fast forward to today, I think it's important also we put everything in context. What they were doing then, they were agitating, they were on the front line agitating for the repeal of Section 2 of the old constitution, so that there's a restoration of multi-party democracy. That's what they were advocating for. And the then regime of Moi, which had a stranglehold on Kenyan society, was restless. They became restless because of the restlessness of the society. And so any leading voices would become primary targets of repression, and they were being beaten and being hunted down like common fugitives in their own country. But today, we got that multi-party democracy. Now, how do we handle the new, it's like,
challenges that
if you come from Luo Nyanza, or those of us who come from areas where there are rivers and you go fishing, it's like catching a mudfish and you get excited while you're still standing in the river. It will easily slip out of your hands and go back, and you'll go back home to eat vegetables. So that is how slippery the space is right now, and the main issues that preoccupy the current discourse. It's no longer the agitating for multi-party. Now democracy has come. We don't know how to deal with the freedoms and liberties that come with democracy. There are no guardrails. Everybody wants to exercise their freedoms. They go overboard and all that. Everybody says, I have a freedom the Constitution has given me, but they don't want to observe certain legal guardrails to make sure that they don't go overboard, they don't infringe on the rights of others, because your right stops where the rights of others start.
Let me ask this, Reverend. When a president walks into a church and donates 20 million and says, I pledge another 100 million when I come back for Harambee, the same president who gave an executive order saying that there is not going to be donations or Harambees to religious institutions. Does it mean then the church can't come out strongly, church leadership, to speak against the president going against his own word?
You see, there's a difference between the practice of religion and faith and the interaction with the politics. What the president made was a political pronouncement that was relevant at that time, and because there was pressure. But the truth of the matter is, from a Christian perspective, giving and sacrifice is one of the pillars. Just like in Islam, giving and sacrifice is one of the pillars of religion. So you cannot separate sacrifice in the house of God. But this was not an offering. You know, there's a difference between an offering and a donation. What the church had, the church that is the subject of this discourse, they have a project. You say you have a church that has a project that requires 1.5 billion shillings to complete. The head of state comes, he's not giving an offering for Sunday service, a donation for that project. You say 20 million is a lot of money, and yet the church requires 1.2 billion. How long is it going to take before that church raises 1.2 billion to finish that project? So sometimes what I think the problem is, there is a confusion between offering and donation. As for donation,
the question here
the thing is
the president banned the donation.
No, you see, there's no legal instrument that supported that. That was an executive declaration. But when it comes to issues of practice of faith, even if the president pronounces himself, addressed a press conference from morning to evening, if I'm a believer and I'm a Christian and I went to a church and there is a need for resources to build the house of God, whether the president makes that declaration and I go and give, there is nobody who will arrest me, because there is no legal instrument to back.
You see,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
I think we need to understand where we are. The synopsis of where we find ourselves and the audacity of leaders saying one thing and doing another. The same man is the one who said that we should actually stop harambes and donations. And he is still the same guy who is going to break those rules.
Because there is no legal
There is no legal backing and framework. Now, this goes back to why Bishop Mwai would do what he did. You see, a lot of people never understood what happened in June. When the Gen Z went on the streets, they were not fighting the government. They were fighting a system. And that system is the one that told them that when you graduate, you will find a job. We are preparing you for tomorrow. And you've grown up, John Paul, knowing very well you have been told you're the future leader of tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Now today is a day where the young people are saying, if those roles and those opportunities are not created for us, we shall create them for ourselves, okay? And so you have this man, a system that has been like that over and over again. Reverend Mark alluded to the gallant fathers, the general, fighting for democracy. Now we have that democracy. We found it. We have the new constitution.
Yes.
The supremacy of the law belongs to the people, isn't it? And so when these people go to the street and say, this is wrong, and there was a time when they were advocating for follow the rules and follow the law, they knew actually at first, because I was also there in the first one, I took my water, my flag, I went on the streets. Not because I was fighting anybody, but I was hearing a voice of saying, this bill and this system doesn't work for the people and how you've prepared us. People are learned, John Paul, out here who are selling melons. There are no jobs. People are out there, people who are not going to school, earning millions. They don't really know even how to spend the money. And so when we have an issue between offering and donation, that is not the problem. The problem lies with leadership. Bishop Mwai should know, in his capacity as bishop in the first place, which the Bible says that it is an office of honor. It is a leadership space where he knows he is the voice of hope. The same man went to JCC, and I remember Bishop Lai spoke the same. There was nothing as donation in that space.
Maybe
and I remember, there wasn't a project. That's fine. But you see, he stood and spoke of the unethical and the unmoral things that are happening around the country. SHA is not working. The health sector is in problem. Education sector is in shambles. And so, in line with what Reverend Mark is saying, what happened to to our leader at Bishop Mwai's place was a political statement. And he knew what he was doing. Because the church, which is the ground of credibility, the same church is the one who pushed him there. And so when he makes such a statement, either he gives the money or doesn't give the money. You saw what happened in Roysambu. An uprising of young people coming up and saying, how does this generation understand? And that's the problem, John Paul. Okay. There's a generation that doesn't understand what young people are saying. They think that they can actually push food down their throats. And these guys are saying, show me how to fish. I know how to do it. Create a space for me. But we have grown up, and those who are our forefathers, saying this is what belongs to you. But these guys are coming and saying, change the system. Let the health sector work. Let this thing work. And the church, honestly, John Paul, has failed on that one. It's time to disagree and say that we have failed. And let me tell you, if church fathers would call for a press conference and say, we have failed and forgive us and let's move on from this, there is always someone who's coming back to explain what happened. Now the church is quiet. No one is talking. You see? Yeah. Again, the question will be, who is the church?
Yeah. Of course, they've always said the church is you and me. Yes. Then we need to speak. And of course, we've created platforms such as this. Yeah. Reverend, when we see such kind of donations, and we also see the economic hardship and the struggles that Kenyans are going through, the critics of President's generosity are saying, instead of donating 120 million to a project, invest it in our healthcare system, in our education system. So is this a way of silencing the voice of the church so that any critics or any sources that will criticize what the government is doing is totally silenced?
No, I think we need to put everything into perspective. First of all, the person that is the subject of this conversation is none other than the President of the Republic of Kenya. So, while many see that this 120, first of all, he gave his own donation of 20 million. The 100, he said he's going to ask his friends to help to contribute. So it's not like the President had 120 million lying idle somewhere under his bed, akasema, Mama Rachel, situpeleke Pastor Mwai kitu haina kazi hapa. No, that's what he did. But then we must also understand the truth of the matter is that when it comes to offering of social services and all that, the Constitution is clear. It's done through taxpayers' money. The President didn't say, I'm going to ask Treasury to allocate this money. That was his own money. And he was going to ask his friends to contribute. So there is that misunderstanding. People think that this is our money. And the President should have taken that to a hospital. The question is, how do you appropriate that money? You see? Because these are public facilities that are meant to be constructed and to be developed through taxpayers' money or public funds. So it's like saying, every rich man should not help anybody. If they want to help, let them take that money and go to the local health center and build it. It doesn't work that way. Nowhere in the world does it work that way, unless someone decides to develop a facility in their village, like some kind of philanthropic act, build one and all that. But saying, we don't have medicine. The President, even if he's rich, we have many billionaires in Kenya, leave alone millionaires. But there's nobody who has ever begrudged them and said, these people are billionaires, some of them own choppers.
I think because the President has the responsibility based on him through a democratic process. So then,
don't forget he's an individual.
Let me disagree honorably with Reverend.
Yes,
no problem.
Yes.
But I want to take a short break.
Okay.
I don't know whether you.
No. It is in line with this.
Let him disagree with me first.
Yes. Honorably. I think the question here is not with the President. I would put the fundamental question here is with the leadership, both the church, the government space. If you look at government right now in regards to the President giving 20 million, and there's no problem with him giving. He always does that. Even right now, probably where he is, we have no idea if he's giving. But the fundamental issue here is leadership. The church meets the states. The church meets the state. And when you look at it in a way to solve a problem, you're looking at a system that does not work for this common mwananchi. The person who actually is seated there the money, the question marks we have when it comes to the treasury. I mean, there were headlines, recently when the 1.3 trillion was unaccounted for, and this is coming from the Auditor General, and saying this is the question mark, and so there are so many question marks on how money is being spent, to where now the public has a perception that this money is being squandered, this money is actually being misused, and that's where the term corruption comes in. Okay. And so when you have someone who needs to sort a problem of medical issue, an education issue, something like that, coming to donate to you, probably the money you're thinking, this money should be diverted to somewhere else. I am paying taxes, yes, and I don't know how he has the money, and there are no medicine, medicine in the hospitals. I will stand and ask questions. Okay. And so if that is not sorted out, John Paul, we are looking at a crumbling space of leadership. Okay. Executive, legislature, and the judiciary itself. The judiciary.
Rev, I'll come back to you so that you respond to that. But who funds the president when he moves around on Sundays? Does he attend church services as the presidency or as an individual? Well, all that thought. Okay. We are taking a short break. Yes. We'll be back, and Rev will be taking to answer those questions. But to you who is watching us as well, do you believe that the donations that is being given by the political class to our churches is in attempt to silence the voice of the church? You can be part of this discussion. SMS your comments to our SMS line, 20316. Our WhatsApp line is 0786 316 316. And we'll be right back after this short break.
We are living in a lost and broken world, constantly bombarded by messages of hate and atrocities. But with God, we can overcome. Find hope and restoration on the go through life-changing shows on the Family Media app.
And then you will lose yourself and gain the world. And Jesus said, what good is it?
Get to stream Family TV and Family Radio 316 straight from your phone. Catch up on a show you missed or create video streaming playlists by saving and watching videos from our huge variety of shows at your own convenience. Download the Family Media app, available for all Android and iOS users on the Google Play Store and Apple Store respectively. Family Media, keeping Jesus on the airwaves.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. We are looking at the intersection of the church, politics, and money. And we are learning that this is not just the intersection of church and politics. It's all to do with leadership and governance, both in our churches and, of course, in the government structures. Joining me in this discussion is Reverend Mark Echakara, who is a pastor and also a governance expert. I'm also joined by Pastor Moses Githinji, who is the chair of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya Youth Commission. Rev, before we went on break, of course, we had a disagreement in terms of what exactly this is, and the church failing to take its prophetic role in speaking to some of these things.
No, yeah. I didn't really see it as a disagreement as such. What he was saying is actually very important. I think the ball is now in the court of the religious leaders. The people who come to their congregations, the people who visit, the people who come to do their donations, to make their donations and give their offerings, have whatever their intentions, it is the responsibility of the leader, the church leader, the bishop, the pastor, the reverend, to remain true to their calling. You see? Because the fear is their voice is being muzzled, is potentially going to be muzzled and to be compromised. But the question is, are they really going to be compromised? If they are not going to be compromised, then it means those leaders must prove that these fears are not valid, because their receiving of these leaders and their donations had nothing to do with them becoming spiritual or religious sellouts, so that then their voices are silenced. Okay. On the contrary, even when you went to scriptures, men would bring their offerings and the prophets would still rebuke them. So I think the prophetic voice of the church needs to remain strong, and the religious leaders who are the subject of this discourse, because people fear their voices are going to be silenced, must come out true and remain true to their calling, so that their interactions with the political leaders are seen to be pure and purely on the basis of the need that these people came to help them. But the ball is in the court of the religious leaders to remain true and to maintain the strength and the credibility of the prophetic voice of the church. I think that is where the blame lies. Not even the politicians, the pastors must prove. When need be, they must call out the leaders if they're not performing. And when it comes to the issue of like the auditor's report, I think the auditor's report is not just written in ambiguity. There is a sense in which the auditor tracks resources, and where a disconnect happens, they say this is where there was this blur, this place here is not clear, there's ambiguity, there is something that is not clear here. So at the end of the day, we can be able to track the auditor's report and tell exactly at whose feet or at whose door the blame lies. So the auditor always says, this and this county government or this and this ministry did not do this and this. This was not used for the purpose for which it was budgeted for. So the auditor report does not create ambiguities and raise more questions. It leads us. It says the money indeed was released, dispatched from Treasury to the accounts of the county government. It was meant for this project. But from our follow-up, this project was not implemented. The question then is, where did this money go? The county, the CEC, Treasury, Finance in the county government, and the governor must answer to this and tell us where did the money go. So it doesn't just leave us somewhere lost in a bush. No, it always places blame somewhere. Yeah, so I think that is.
Okay, I'm coming to you, Pastor, but also with the aspect of, because he's spoken to proof. Another aspect of proof is in areas of accountability, and also mostly in our churches as well, because there are also people of the opinion that if the president doesn't declare what he's given and he does it in secret, the way we want him to do in secret, then the issue of accountability is the church members, the congregants will rise up and say, where is the money that was given? So if Pastor Mwai or whichever pastor is given the amount and says, oh, the president only gave me 5 million, how would you deal with that?
I think it is good to understand and to lay down the structure and say, giving in church is not a problem. I advocate for that. If you're a leader and you are the guest, owner of a function, you give last, because everybody wants to know how much you've given, and they want to give you in big sums, okay? So there's nothing wrong in giving. What we do not understand, and I agree with what Reva said, that the church plays a very big role. And when we talk about the church, let's talk about both the body of Christ, spiritual space, the church built as an organization, because the law doesn't understand spiritual things. It will ask, who is the church? And the church, that's why now we have a lot of names registered under the government to say, we are CITAM, we are Assemblies of God, we are a Redeemed Gospel Church, we are a church. And so the law interprets that to being a spiritual gathering. When you come to donating and making sure that you are there to push a project, there is nothing wrong with that. But let's not forget church history. Very, very important and categorical in how we do things. The same scripture talks about the children of Issachar understanding the times. I feel the church doesn't understand the times at the moment. The oppression the people have, the abductions, the lack of food and just the suffering around. There is no video I've watched, John Paul, of young people. I think there's a video trending on something happening in Mathare where this gang of young people are going and mugging people. When we get to a space, even on the road, daylight, when we get to a point where the connection and the gravity of the matter we can't handle, church needs to know, what do we need to do now? There is nothing, and I'm saying this with all humility, there is nothing that the church can do when it comes to trying to change the perspective of what is happening at the moment. There is a space of calling the president. There is a space of the church coming together, and we love this country. And Reverend Mark can tell you, we do not fight this country to bring it down. The system itself do not even allow people to breathe. And so there are those spaces where we need to be called upon, come together and begin to talk about the issues affecting man. Okay. And so that is clear to everyone. So I am behind the church. I am in a space where I'm saying there is so much that we need to do. And again, it all comes back to leadership. We need to understand the times, JP. It is the time to receive money. And Elisha said, this is not the time to receive gifts. And then there was a time in Israel where God said, let people bring all that they have, you see? And so there is a giving space, and there is a space of saying, what is actually going on here? And it didn't matter, even during the times of prophets. We could see kings trying to bribe prophets. And prophets would say, this is not the time. In as much as you do this, and I feel the church lacks that. And when that is found, it can only be found with our church fathers who can come together and say, there is a problem. How do we solve it?
Where is it then that the political money seems so sweet to the church and they can't refuse to take it? Because when the church doesn't understand the times, then it has to put some control measures. They have tried in the past to put some control measures. The Conference of Catholic Bishops have come out very strongly and have made their stand known. Where is it that these other church leaders seems not to understand the times and the only carrot the political class is dangling is the money aspect of things?
You see, you've told us the example, you've given us the example of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is an old institution, okay? And if you were to ask even a young man who goes to Holy Family Basilica, they don't know even when that church was built. Some of them, their fathers who were born came there and found the church had already been built, okay? So that need might not be so pressing, and it has the capacity to, as an institution, it has the financial wherewithal to carry out its projects without the undue influence, if you may call, of political input. But then the issue that the Catholics bishops did that we're talking about, the president did not just get crash that church fundraiser somewhere in
Soweto.
Is it Soweto or where? He didn't get crash. He was invited. You see, someone did not go and whisper him, hey, mzee, kesho nasikia kuna harambee huko Soweto, si tutokelezee tu tujenge jina. Hapana, he was invited there. So that Soweto is a church in an informal settlement. So the majority of our bishops sit in cathedrals that were built before some of them were even, all of them were even born. They were built a long time ago. And if you go to church history, how some of those institutions were built, we don't want even to talk about it. But so we cannot even look at the scriptures. There were times if something was brought into the treasury and it was considered unworthy, it would just be put somewhere kwa kona, because the moment it lands on the altar, it becomes sanctified. Inawekwa kwa kona, whether mwenye alileta alikuwa mwizi, itawekwa kwa kona. So that is how, as believers, as Christians, we should practice our faith. If something is brought and we feel it is unworthy for it to buy stones to build this altar because the person who brought it, we consider him unclean, or the money, the source, we consider it clean, we put it somewhere else, you know, just to show how much we don't value, but because it has landed on the treasury. That is, people don't understand one thing, spiritual issues. The church is not just another organization. There is an altar. That altar, anything that lands there is sanctified. Whether it was brought by a thief, it is sanctified. Now, if the leader, the priest who watches over the altar, discerns that the source of this money is not clean, even though it has come to the treasury, the scriptures have provision for that money not to be used in the main altar, but to be put somewhere else because it's already come. Okay. Yeah, so that is how it's supposed to be. But you can't return to the person who gave because they say, hey, I hear you are a night runner. In Western, we call them Omundu Mulosi. You can't take your money. Here you are a thief or you are a prostitute. We can't. You know, like the story of Jesus who was anointed. Yeah. And they said, does he know what kind of woman this is? To those who knew the history, the dubious reputation of this woman, that oil was not worthy even to land on the head of Jesus. But Jesus commended her and said, she's preparing me for my burial, for my death, and all that. She's anointed me in advance. So while those religious leaders were viewing the lady from their prejudices based on the understanding of her dubious reputation, Jesus appreciated the timing of what she was doing. Wow. Okay, so like he said, there's time and a season for everything, but we must appreciate the times we're living in.
The times,
as you pick on that, you went on the streets June 2025.
Yes, I was.
Gen Zs, because all these things that we are seeing now started then. We are also seeing now political realignments with Raila losing AUC seat. We've come back. And now there's new alliance. Is this what you guys were agitating for on the street?
In line with what Trevor said earlier, I think the ball now is with the church, and that's really the profound call for the organization to come. One of the things that brings in the gap when we talk about the church is, JP, do you know how many umbrella bodies are registered with government that represent the church? You have, KCCB of Catholic bishops. You have Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. You have another house of clergy. You have, and so you have all this.
You have senior clergy.
You have not senior clergy. You have church fathers. Yes. You have, so again, for a young man, and I'm talking this from a perspective you understand why the ground, as people say, the ground is reacting to what is going on. The fact is not that the president is giving is wrong. It's just the perception to which he does and how he does it brings in issues. In line now to where we are in terms of, why we were on, marching and was it this. Now, let me say that the history has taught me that it can repeat itself. And I saw Baba join KANU. And I remember by then we were doing a subject called GHC. Nowadays, I don't know if it exists, Geography, History, and Civics. And during that time, I think the lessons were clear that, our gallant fathers were fighting for democracy. And at that time, President Moi allowed multipartism. But we've seen over years, Baba is probably in all government. He's the longest serving president we have, quote unquote, because he's always been in government. If Baba comes on the table with the president to unite the country, that is a very good call. If they are coming to bring issues that are actually affecting the nation, to heal, that is a very good thing. If they are coming to talk about, the reality is the health sector is in shambles, that is a very good thing. If they are coming to say, how do we help the education sector to maneuver and to move on? That is a very, very good call. But if the whole idea of 50-50 broad-based government is about sharing, the national cake, as we call it, we are in something I think we've never been in before. Because this country is on its knees. And let me tell you, these people, Baba and the president, they hold the magnitude now to change this country. And if they don't, they go down in history as actually a study case. And they have only two options. One, they either become a study case on how they saved this country from its needs. Now it's running, it's working. It has become a factor in the global sector. And we are moving on with our imports and exports, and our economy is strong. And they become a study case probably in universities on how to lead a nation in a 50-50 matched government. Two, they can either be a study case of how not to do, because 2050 our kids, this generation called beta and alpha and beta, they will study them as the worst leaders we ever had in this country. And I am telling you, the unfortunate thing is their kids will be here studying in class, but the whole idea is to call them to a space of uniting this country.
All right.
if you look at a way of uniting and bringing on board the church, mine is to say that the church needs to be part and parcel of nation building. I can tell you, JP, I think we have been talking about this on having a youth economical forum where even if the government supports, I'll be there to say, you know, this is really good. Call our people and tell them this is how you run the economy, this is how you run business, this is how you grow the church, and call our church fathers to come and be part and parcel of it. So in line, I'd say this is a very good clear call. So Baba should remember that the day young people told him, Baba ka nyumbani, let us now go on the streets, he might lose his job again if he takes another chance or another direction that is not for nation building.
All right.
I'm just praying that this is the whole idea is to unite the nation. It's a call to unite the nation. Yes.
What does that do, Reverend, then to the opposition and the strength of it? Because then it looks like everyone is in government. So who is going to check the government? Is it Wamunyoro side, Kalonzo, Martha? So where does that, or the church?
I don't think that there is want of dissenting voices and voices of opposition within our current political setup. There are more than enough voices and strong voices at that. Our former Vice President, Kalonzo Musyoka, and his Wiper party have consistently remained in opposition since 2022. And they have been calling out government and checking the government. Lately, we have a new kid on the block. I call them the Wamunyoro Caucus. And they are holding meetings day and night. Their nocturnal assemblies are endless. And their lieutenants on the floor of both houses of parliament have been probably the strongest opponents of this government and calling out government and asking for things to be put right. And with that, I think we have enough voices. But coming back to Baba and President William Ruto and their alliance, I believe that as a nation, we have many issues that are not going for us, that are going against us. And the majority of these things can only be solved if our nation has some semblance of stability. There is some semblance of stability and a critical mass of voices that are going to stand on the side that will make critical decisions that are in the best interest of the people. If Baba were to join the opposition, it means that the opposition would outnumber government. The implication of that is that the government will not be able to pass critical bills in the House that are necessary to be able to help push the government agenda forward, which is to serve the people better. So those are the implications. Now with Baba on this side, it means that the numbers have tipped slightly in favor of government. Now the question is, are they going to use this incentive for the interests of the people, or are they going to confirm the fears that people have that these are all selfish moves? That is the biggest question that President William Ruto and Raila Odinga need to answer, and to make sure that they confirm to the Kenyan people that the only reason they have come together is for the best interest of the people. Okay. So that is the big challenge that they have.
Okay. As we come to a close, moving forward, what would you want to see? Maybe 30 seconds, then I'll come to you.
I think, let me say, we need to put systems in place. Systems need to work for the people. People elect leaders to help them. They are employed by the leaders. What you say and what you do need to be, they need to align. If you become someone who is, people don't trust you on face value, I mean, things change even on the ground by the time you're coming back to make promises. And we need to be very, very careful, John Paul, when we even promise our kids things. We are living in a generation where what you say, they'll hold you accountable. And they have a way of saying nowadays that internet doesn't forget. What they mean is this is the most dangerous generation we've ever seen, most informed, to a level where they can generate people in caskets. And I don't need to go into details. But that was the extreme part of things, you see. I'm looking forward to see a nation that is listening and acting.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to see a nation that cares for its people. A nation where we can't feed. We want to be first world country. We want to be the best in Africa, but we can't feed our people. They can't go to hospital. Our systems are not working. And I think it's a space to come back and say, let us agree we have a problem. From the church, meeting with our political leaders in both church and state, and begin to come up with solutions that will move forward. Not forgetting that 65% of the population of Kenya is for the youth, and that needs to be clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pastor Moses.
Thank you.
And happy anniversary.
Thank
you. Plan to celebrate your
Thank you.
50th anniversary.
Thank you, sir.
In September.
Yes. Greetings from our General Secretary.
Yes.
That is Kefa Nyandega,
Yes.
Reverend, and Archbishop Philip Kitoto, who is our chairman.
We shall bring them on Crosstalk. I think they should be our next guest next week.
Yes.
Organize that.
Yes, we
our
will.
audience have listened to that. So we'll take you to course on that. Yes, Rev Mark. What would you want to see moving forward? That is it.
What I want to see moving forward is for us to be patient with each other. The truth of the matter is we are a democracy. And like he said, this is probably one of the most informed generations. So that if you make promises, there's a time will come when they will mark the script. So let us try to give the president and his political handlers the benefit of the doubt. Let them have their time on the stage, let them dance. At the end of the day, like those of us who used to go to music festivals, people would come wearing skirts of size of dance, all the best. Another one comes, they pull all the plugs and they do everything. At the end of the day, the adjudicators will mark and decide this is number one, this is number last, this is number two. The Kenyan people are going to mark the script. Let the president keep his promises. Let the people give the president a space. If they think he's lying, let them allow him to lie, because 2027, they are the ones who will decide whether they will employ him again, extend his contract, or send him back to Sugoi. So let's just give the president space to work, and let us give Baba and William Ruto the benefit of the doubt, and then we will see at the end of the day whether their coming together was for selfish reasons or indeed for the benefit of the Kenyan people.
Thank you so much. Any anniversary coming along? No,
okay? No, I don't have one. So.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
But I'm a member of EAK as well.
Yes.
So it's our anniversary.
Yes.
Congratulations. As Family Media, we just celebrated our 25th.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes. Great, congratulations.
So we are also catching up with you.
Yeah.
We're waiting for the cake. I hope it's still around.
It's still around.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You can feel it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching Crosstalk. I think one thing that I've taken into consideration from this discussion, that is also expensive to build a tabernacle. That's something that Reverend Mark was discussing as we were on the break on this program, that it's not cheap to build the house of worship. But at the end of the day, whatever we do, those of us who have been called to a place of leadership, your words must align with your actions. Because in 2027, or whichever period your term elapses, if you are a church leader, the Kenyan people will mark the script. Until next week, have a good night.